Hello everyone. I'm going to do a quick lecture here on classical conditioning, a pretty big and important topic in the field of psychology. Um, First discovered by a man named Ivan Pavlov. You've maybe heard of the name Pavlov in the past, and we'll talk a little bit about what he did. But basically, classical conditioning is when you are essentially training someone or something like an animal to have a response to something. Okay, and what Ivan Pavlov did is he was a physiologist who was studying the digestive tract, and so he rigged up this system where he had dogs kind of hung in this contraption, and he had things in their mouth that would measure how much they drooled over here. And so they would bring in things like food and put it in this bowl and then measure how much they drooled. And when he did that over and over again, what he found was that just when a researcher would walk in, even if they didn't have food, the dog would start to drool. And he thought that was interesting. And so he kind of set out to study this a little bit. There's a good YouTube video link in the discussion for this um, that explains this a little bit more. But this is a really important slide right here. This is going to be on the test, I can promise you. And let me see if I can move myself out of the way a little bit. Not that. Let's see. I'm going to hide me for a minute. So what he would do is there would be something called an unconditioned stimulus, UCS. And in this example that Pavlov used was meat or meat powder, whatever that is. And when you present that to a dog, it gets an unconditioned response. The dog drools. Okay, so this happens all on its own. It's like a reflex for the dog. Okay, it's not conditioned. It's unconditioned. It just happens. And then what Pavlov did is he started introducing something called a neutral stimulus to the dogs. This is something that means nothing to the dog in and of itself, something like a bell ringing. And the dog would kind of hear that and think, oh, okay, what's that? Then there would be this process of conditioning where Pavlov would ring the bell, and then immediately he would present the dog with some food, and of course the dog would drool. So it's the neutral stimulus of the bell, followed by the unconditioned stimulus of the meat, and you still get the unconditioned kind of reflexive response, drooling. But you do this over and over and over again. And what you get is conditioning, where now the bell ringing has turned into a conditioned stimulus. And when you ring the bell, because you've done this so many times, the dog believes that food might be coming, and he starts to drool. And now the drooling is a conditioned response. It's not unconditioned anymore. We've conditioned it because normally dogs don't drool to bells. But we've done this over and over again, and now our dog is conditioned to drool every time it hears that controlled stimulus. Okay, so this is a really important concept, and this week's discussion asks you to kind of come up with a way that you might do this in a certain situation. One of the things, a couple other things I wanted to just touch on quickly. There's this concept of stimulus generalization. There's also a link in the discussion to a video of a very famous experiment about little Albert, where they condition this poor little baby to be scared of white furry objects. And what happens is the baby is originally trained to be scared of a white rat that's fuzzy. But then what they find out is the baby is also scared of a number of other white fluffy things. And that's called stimulus generalization. So if you train your dog to drool to a specific bell, but then for some reason you lose the bell and you find another one that's a little bigger, the sound is a little bit different. The dog still drools, but not quite as much. That's called stimulus generalization, responding to a stimuli that's close to the conditioned stimulus, but not quite the same. Okay. And so I think that's the basics of classical conditioning. You're going to really want to look at this slide and think about how this works. Just quickly, I'll kind of give you another example. When my daughter was very young, to get her to, okay, well, not just my daughter, but a lot of babies, when you put them in a quiet, dark room, they get sleepy. Okay, so the unconditioned stimulus is a quiet, dark room, and for most babies, they get sleepy. Okay, well, with my daughter, one thing that we did was we also got this little turtle that played music at night for about 20 or 30 minutes. Same little tune over and over again. So we started playing that when we put her in the quiet, dark room, and she would get sleepy. And then pretty soon, if you just turned on that music, she would start yawning and rubbing her eyes. She was getting sleepy. She was getting conditioned to the music of the little turtle. Okay. One other quick example, I have a cat. The cat likes its treats. So for most cats, you have a treat and it makes them, I would assume, drool, although she doesn't seem to drool, but she sure meows and gets excited. Well, if any of you have cats, you know that if you just jingle the cat treat before they get once they hear the cat treat jingle in the container, they come running. So you jingle the cat treat, then they get the treat and they're excited and salivating. And then pretty soon, just jingling the cat treat is enough to get a reaction from them. They've been conditioned to the sound of the treats in the container, which actually doesn't mean anything to cats. They don't know what that is, but they've been conditioned so many times to know that treats might be coming that they've been conditioned to it. So I look forward to seeing your responses in the discussion, and I'll kind of be hopping in there to make sure that everybody's doing it right and on the same page. And I think that's about it for this one.